Imagine, for a moment, your child being falsely accused of a crime they didn't commit. Now picture this accusation coming from a police officer, someone society is taught to trust and respect. The people around you, including those who know your child, believe the officer's word over theirs. What would you do? Would you fight back, stand your ground, and prove your child's innocence? Or would you feel powerless in the face of the law, as your child's future is at stake? This is not just a hypothetical scenario. This was the reality for 13-year-old Marcus Thompson, whose life was upended by a false accusation made by an officer in his small, quiet neighborhood in Cedar Grove, New Jersey. The story of Marcus's ordeal in a courtroom, fighting against not only a false accusation but also the unjust power of a system that was supposed to protect him, is one that will leave you speechless. The calm before the storm. It was an ordinary evening in Cedar Grove. This was the type of suburban neighborhood where neighbors knew each other's names, children still played outside after school, and everyone felt safe. Cedar Grove was the kind of place where bad things didn't happen, not because it was a utopia, but because it was a tight-knit community where people looked out for each other. On this particular evening, Marcus Thompson, a bright and active 13-year-old, was doing what he loved best, playing soccer with his friends. They were practicing for an upcoming championship game, excited about the match and filled with youthful energy. They were in Marcus's front yard, just a stone's throw away from the house he shared with his parents, David and Sarah Thompson. At the same time, Officer James Peterson, a veteran of the Cedar Grove Police Department, was driving home from a long, tiring shift. The day had been filled with domestic disputes, traffic violations, and paperwork, leaving him drained and irritable. He longed for a peaceful evening with his family, and the quiet neighborhood seemed to promise just that. But as he drove past Marcus's house, something happened that would turn his and Marcus's world upside down. The false accusation. Without warning, a rock came crashing into the windshield of Officer Peterson's patrol car, shattering it with a loud crack. Furious, Peterson slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to an abrupt stop. His heart raced with anger as he jumped out of the car, scanning the neighborhood for the culprit. He saw Marcus standing there, soccer ball in hand, surrounded by his friends who were already retreating in fear. Without hesitation, Peterson marched toward Marcus, his boots thudding on the pavement. "Did you just throw that rock at my car?" Peterson shouted, his voice loud and accusatory. The neighborhood fell silent as people peeked through their windows to see what was happening. Marcus froze. He had no idea what was going on. "No, sir, I didn't do anything," he stammered, his voice trembling. But the officer wasn't listening. Years of dealing with people he believed were lying had hardened Peterson. He was quick to judge and even quicker to make assumptions. He grabbed Marcus's arm and pulled him toward his patrol car, ignoring the protests of Marcus's parents, who had run outside after hearing the commotion. "Please, officer, there must be some mistake," Sarah Thompson pleaded, her voice breaking as tears began to form in her eyes. "Marcus would never do something like this. He's a good boy," David added, his voice steady but filled with rising panic. "We were watching him play. He couldn't have thrown that rock." But it didn't matter. Officer Peterson had already made up his mind. Within moments, backup arrived and Marcus was handcuffed and placed into the back of a patrol car. The once peaceful street was now illuminated by the flashing red and blue lights of the police cars. Marcus's mother collapsed into her husband's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. The neighbors, who had known Marcus his entire life, watched in stunned silence as the officers drove away with a boy who had only been playing soccer in his own yard. A family's struggle. The days that followed were a nightmare for the Thompsons. They hired a lawyer, Edward Martinez, who had a reputation for handling cases involving police misconduct. However, even Martinez warned them that it would be an uphill battle. The case was simple. It was Marcus's word against the word of a police officer. In the court of public opinion, who would believe the word of a 13-year-old over a trusted police officer? The Thompsons were devastated. Their home, once a place of comfort, became a command center for their son's defense. They reached out to neighbors, posted on social media, and begged anyone who might have seen something that could prove Marcus's innocence to come forward. Meanwhile, Marcus sat in juvenile detention, trying to stay strong despite his fear and the overwhelming uncertainty about his future. The courtroom fight. Days later, Marcus found himself standing in a packed courtroom. His heart raced as he awaited his turn to speak. The media had latched onto the story. The idea of a 13-year-old boy attacking a police officer was sensational, and the case attracted significant attention. Officer Peterson took the witness stand, recounting his version of events with confidence. "Your Honor," Peterson said, his voice filled with authority, "I saw him throw the rock. It was deliberate, malicious, and could have caused a serious accident." Behind Marcus, his parents sat together, their faces pale with worry. They believed their son, but who would believe them over an officer of the law? But then, something incredible happened. In a moment of bravery, Marcus stood up, his hands trembling but his voice steady. He addressed Judge Harold Mitchell, a stern man known for his tough sentencing and no-nonsense attitude. "Your Honor," Marcus began, "I didn't throw the rock. I have proof." The courtroom fell silent. You could hear a pin drop as Marcus pulled out 3 pieces of evidence that would turn the case on its head. The unthinkable evidence. The first piece of evidence was a grainy black-and-white video captured by a nearby house's CCTV camera. The footage showed a teenager on a bicycle, hurling the rock at Peterson's patrol car before riding away quickly. Marcus was nowhere near the scene. The second piece of evidence was even more damning. Mrs. Rodriguez, a neighbor, had been recording her daughter's dance routine on her phone in their front yard. In the background of the video, Marcus could be clearly seen playing soccer with his friends, nowhere near where the rock had been thrown. But it was the third piece of evidence that sealed the case. Marcus's soccer ball, a birthday gift from his tech-savvy uncle, had a built-in GPS tracker. The data from the tracker showed exactly where the ball had been during the entire evening. It proved that Marcus had been playing soccer in his front yard as he had claimed, and not anywhere near the patrol car when the rock was thrown. The truth prevails. Judge Mitchell reviewed the evidence carefully, his eyebrows furrowing as he pieced together what had truly happened. Slowly he turned his gaze to Officer Peterson, whose face had gone pale. "Officer," the judge said, his voice cold and stern, "how do you explain this?" Peterson stammered, but no words came out. The truth had come to light, and it hit the courtroom like a thunderclap. Marcus had been telling the truth all along. Tears streamed down Sarah Thompson's face as she embraced her son. David held them both tightly, whispering in Marcus's ear, "You did it, son. You stood up for yourself." The Thompsons had fought for justice and they had won. The aftermath, the implications of what had happened reached far beyond that courtroom. The real culprit, a troubled teenager named Kyle Matthews, was eventually apprehended and admitted to throwing the rock. But the story didn't end there. Officer Peterson was held accountable for his reckless actions. The judge ruled that Peterson's false accusation had caused unnecessary trauma to Marcus and his family. Peterson was charged with misconduct and suspended without pay. The Thompsons filed a $10 million lawsuit for defamation and emotional distress, but their goal wasn't just financial compensation. They wanted to make sure that no other family would have to go through what they had endured. The Thompsons used their settlement to establish a foundation dedicated to helping young people who face false accusations. The foundation provided legal support and resources for those in need, ensuring that others would have the tools to fight back against unjust accusations. Marcus's story made national headlines, sparking important conversations about police accountability, racial profiling, and the presumption of innocence. He was invited to speak at schools and youth organizations, sharing his message of standing up for the truth, no matter the odds. In Cedar Grove, the local police department implemented new training programs focusing on bias awareness and proper investigative procedures. The tragedy that befell Marcus had led to real change in the community. Justice and Forgiveness Officer Peterson, after serving his suspension, requested to meet with Marcus and his family to offer a personal apology. The meeting was difficult, but it ended with understanding and eventually forgiveness. As for Marcus, his life has taken a new direction. He is now in college, studying law with the hope of becoming a civil rights attorney. His story serves as a reminder that justice is not about power or position, it is about the truth. The courage he displayed, even as a young teenager, shows that standing up for what is right is always worth the fight. His story forces us to ask difficult questions. How many others have been falsely accused, their voices drowned out because they didn't have the courage or the resources to stand up? And in a world where power can sometimes overshadow truth, what kind of society are we if we don't demand justice and accountability from those who wield that power? Marcus's case is a powerful example of the importance of seeking the truth before rushing to judgment. His story is not just a testament to his resilience but a call to action for all of us to stand up for what's right regardless of the odds.